the 27th. The Pledge of Allegiance. Attorney Larmore, could you lead us, please? Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Anderson?
Present.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
Present.
Commissioner Fresco?
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Here.
Commissioner Newbold?
Here.
Commissioner Perry?
Here.
And Chair McKinnon?
Present. Commissioner Fonda Bernardi, do you wish to say something?
Well, I'm going to recuse myself for this particular agenda item. I don't know if there's any other announcements or anything I should be here for, but
We'll get to that in a second. Commissioner Fonda Bernardi has a conflict of interest because his office is within the prescribed circumference of influence, so he will recuse himself in a minute. In the meantime, the Planning Director's report.
Good evening, Commission. Our next meeting on, well, actually, the May 6th meeting has been canceled. So our next meeting after tonight will be May 11th. On that agenda, we have two variances, a track map and a development review hearing for 1626 Lincoln. The May 18th meeting, it looks like we might end up canceling that meeting. There's only a couple of items on there which could easily move to June 1st, but we'll let the Commission know about that. On June 1st, we have the parking structure out by the Bergamot Arts Center, and then also a discussion about the Pico neighborhood plan. And then June 15th is the regular meeting, and at this point we have a variance scheduled and an alcohol CUP. Coming up at City Council, items related to planning, we have the Expo Parking Initiative on May 10th. The same evening we have the zoning ordinance cleanup and also 500 Broadway DA. A lot of planning issues that evening. And then other events coming up, of course May 20th is Expo grand opening. The main opening event will be the following day, May 21st, Saturday. And then, of course, on June 5th is the Open Streets event. So both of those things are coming up soon.
Thank you. Any Planning Commissioner announcements? All right. So then we move to Development Agreement 15 ENT 0212. Thank you, Commissioner, for joining us. I'd like a motion before we start, Commissioners. This is probably the most consequential development agreement that we're likely to see. It runs 55 years. We're almost 2 decades into it. It involves billions of dollars of investment, thousands of people's time. It impacts a great deal of the city of Santa Monica significantly, one way or another. I suggest that people who speak be given 3 minutes and the applicant be given 20 minutes, which is 5 more minutes than normal, to explain the situation. Can I have a motion to that effect, please?
I'll move that we allow 3 minutes for public testimony and 20 minutes at least for the applicant.
Well, I will judge how the applicant's going at the end of 20 minutes, and then I'll
Sounds good.
speak to you again. Move Commissioner Kennedy, seconded Commissioner Fresco. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say no.
No.
Okay, thank you. Carried. So the other thing that I wish to draw people's attention to is at the moment I've looked at the list of speakers, public speakers, and we have approximately 25 public speakers. I'm aware that possibly 20 of them come from the same source, so many of you will want to speak in support of St John's. However, it may be useful if there is not a great deal of public comment that you coalesce and think about a number of people speaking, but not necessarily the full number of 20 people, and that way we'll be able to move through the agenda this evening without in any way affecting the testimony you want to give, but you need to consider that as we move forward. Ms Tamahori, could you present the Planning Department's report, please? Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Roxanne Tanamori with the City Planning Division. Tonight's item is a preliminary concept discussion of a development agreement amendment for Providence St. John's Health Center. The applicant's amendment would allow for an extension of time to complete phased construction for the health center, as originally authorized by the 1998 development agreement. In this presentation, I'll provide some background on the original DA, a summary of Phase 2 development requirements, in the applicant's Phase 2 project before outlining the proposed amendments up for discussion. As part of this preliminary discussion, staff is seeking Planning Commission feedback and recommendation. The most fundamental question is whether an extension of time is warranted to complete phased construction for the Phase 2 project. And if yes, how should that review and approval be structured? The applicant has proposed a framework vis-a-vis their amendment, and staff has also provided an alternative that we'll discuss in greater detail. And if an extension of time is warranted, we would appreciate this commission addressing vested rights in the context of the proposed amendment. We'd also like Planning Commission to provide some feedback on the concepts of the Phase 2 project, particularly related to circulation, the parking structure, a couple of items that really address and affect the phasing plan that's proposed. Within that context, if there are any particular project alternatives that come out of that discussion, we would take note as they might inform the EIR analysis that staff will be conducting. And finally, we would appreciate Planning Commission prioritizing potential community benefits for which city staff and the applicant would enter into negotiations on. And with that, I will jump into a little bit about the project site. This is a map that outlines the Providence St. John's Health Center North Campus and also the South Campus. This is the framework under which the development agreement lays out Phase 2 development. There are 3 North Campus designated areas or development sites, and there are also 2 larger development areas on the South Campus. These are a couple of views of the health center. The health center on the upper left along Arizona on the lower 2 slides, and then also up along 23rd Street in the upper right-hand corner. This is a view of several of the North Campus development sites as well. The first one, this is the area along 20th Street where a parking structure is proposed. There are also 2 sites of the development areas flanking the existing entry plaza. And finally, the former bank site, which is the home for the new St. John's Health Center Foundation in the lower right-hand corner. On the South Campus, this is a view of the existing John Wayne Cancer Research Institute, as well as a view along 21st Street, and a view of the multifamily building that's vacant on the site. And this is also a couple of views around the South Campus, looking from Broadway at the surface parking lots that are proposed as part of Phase 2 development. This is just a quick snapshot of a couple of surrounding uses. We have a variety of different residential types. We have condos, single-family home. There's commercial buildings, hotel, of course, a whole variety of medical services and medical-related uses nearby as well. With respect to the 1998 development agreement, the genesis of that agreement came out of the results of the Northridge earthquake. The development agreement authorized 2 phases. Phase 1 to address rebuilding of the main hospital on the North Campus, and it also authorized development for Phase 2, which is the subject of tonight's discussion. The DA authorized and required a community benefit plan, and the term was set at 55 years. The Phase 1 project, which is now completed, provided 475,000 square feet of construction, some of which was replacement for existing buildings that needed to be torn down due to damage from the earthquake. They included an inpatient center, a new entry plaza, a diagnostic and treatment center, an emergency department, and several open space elements. The community benefit program was established through the development agreement, and that compliance with the program is evaluated each year during development agreement monitoring. There's a whole variety of services provided within the community, both in a broader regional plan and then also specific requirements for Santa Monica under the Santa Monica Community Access Plan. The first amendment to this development agreement was approved in 2011, which provided an alternative to its Phase 1 parking requirement. The small graphic at the bottom just notes pre-earthquake stats on the hospital versus completion of Phase 1 in terms of a reduction in the number of licensed beds and the overall square footage. Can we turn the lights down a little bit on that? So the development agreement provides a lot of process and structure. So I just wanted to, this chart is in the staff report, but I just wanted to highlight where we are with respect to some key milestones from 1998 to 2015. The St. John's Health Center DA was approved in 98. The First Amendment was in July of 2011. Phase one construction was substantially completed in October of 2013, and the Phase 1 vesting deadline, which had previously been extended, was set for January 2014. The Phase 2 project is outlined. All the procedural requirements are provided in the development agreement. In a nutshell, it established a 17-year vested rights term that was subject to extension. It did provide that particular applications and procedures needed to be followed in order for vested rights to be extended beyond that 17-year term, which concluded in July of 2015. Providence submitted all of the necessary applications to move forward after the Phase 2 vesting deadline. The DA for Phase 2 also established vested floor area and uses, development standards for those North Campus sites, the 3 parcels, and also required that a master plan be approved for the South Campus in conjunction with the development proposal. Planning Commission is authorized to approve the master plan. The development agreement also outlines requirements for Phase 2. Development review permits would be required for each of the new buildings that would be proposed, and Planning Commission would approve those development review permits with Council on Appeal. Environmental review is also required. So with respect to milestones, following completion of Phase 1, we're looking at submittal of applications from the applicant consistent with DA requirements back in February and March of 2015. Staff reviewed and deemed all of those applications complete in June of 2015, and when the vesting deadline passed in July of 2015, vested rights were maintained per the development agreement. This is a graphic that speaks to process that's provided in the staff report. I want to go ahead and just highlight 2 things off of this chart. This is really the crux of the process with which the applicant is seeking to amend. For the South Campus, so we're talking about a process now where we're outside of the Phase 2 vesting deadline. The DA prescribes timelines for that circumstance. And in this case, for the South Campus, the master plan would be required. DR permits are required for the buildings, and the applicant would have 18 months from DR approval to pull a building permit and approximately 5 years to complete construction. On the North Campus, the master plan requirement is not a requirement, so in theory a DR permit for the North Campus sites could be pulled without the South Campus master plan. The same 18-month time frame and 5 years to complete is also embedded for the North Campus. Providence has stated that the purpose of the Phase 2 project is to develop a state-of-the-art medical care and research center in the community, with priorities on establishing a new John Wayne Cancer Institute, expanding outpatient and acute care services, and supporting health and wellness education in the community. The project proposes a total of 8 new buildings, 5 on the South and 3 on the North Campus, new circulation and streets, open space elements, an expanded child and family development center, new multifamily housing to replace existing vacant units on site, and visitor housing. This is an image that outlines the development sites again and speaks to floor area. The development agreement outlines a maximum vested floor area of a total of 799,000 square feet. That square footage is divided between the North and South campuses. This is an image of how the applicant has proposed to distribute various uses that are permitted by the development agreement throughout the site. The applicant will spend some more time talking about their proposal, but I wanted to show that in particular the parking structure up on the 20th Street, going down through acute and ambulatory care, and then housing down closer to Broadway. This is a macro view of the site, North and South Campus, with various buildings, and I'll get into the phasing soon on this. These are a couple of renderings of the proposals of the buildings that are proposed as part of Phase 2. So this is, the applicant is proposing North and South Campus development. They're proposing 5 stages of development. This would span over an approximately 20-year time frame. So I'm going to walk you through these and provide some arrows to show you which phases come in which order. So stage A includes a couple of buildings, and again, this is outlined in your staff report, but I wanted to give you a graphic representation of where stage A, the first stage of development, is located. This is on the South Campus. It includes the Child and Family Development Center, new multifamily housing, and the new John Wayne Cancer Institute. Stage B is just one building, and that's the parking structure on the North Campus. Stage C is on the South Campus, and that includes the Education and Conference Center, the East Ambulatory Care Center as well, and the Visitor Housing, which is along Broadway. Stage D is on the North Campus. This is the west lot, adjacent to the entry plaza. There's a surface parking lot there currently. And then Stage E, the final stage, going out in their phasing plan, approximately 20 years, on the east side of the entry plaza and where the former bank building and new foundation building is located. In taking a look at the square footages, the development agreement goes into great detail about square footages and uses, but I wanted to give you just a snapshot of the totals for the North Campus, South Campus, and then Phase 2 project in total. The North Campus, the development agreement provides vested floor area for just over 400,000 square feet. The applicant is proposing 362,000 on the North Campus. One note to make is that approximately 188,000 square feet on the North Campus is devoted for their above-grade parking structure instead of for other permitted medical uses that could be developed. On the South Campus, the DA authorizes 396,000 square feet. The applicant's proposing that amount as well. In total, this is summing up North and South Campus. The application that's been submitted provides floor area that's about 50,000 square feet less than what is allowed per the development agreement under the existing requirements and process. This is for a point of comparison, and we have received some questions about how this project compares to the new zoning ordinance. And so what we have here highlighted in green is just taking the basics, not doing an entire analysis, but looking at the Tier 2 mixed-use, healthcare mixed-use district, the zone, and looking at a 2.5 FAR, which is a Tier 2 project. And so based on North and South Campus, the zoning ordinance, again, this is a macro analysis, but provides floor area of up to 866,000 square feet. That's maximum allowable. The DA numbers are cited there. This is above grade floor area, so that number in the DA would actually be 799 because it includes some below grade space. And then the Phase 1 project, that's their above grade number, 741,000. With respect to the Phase 2 project and circulation, just wanted to provide a slide that shows the current street network. And the applicant is proposing 2 new streets to break up the superblock on the South Campus, a new 20th Place running north and south. We'll get to some changes on 21st Street that's existing, partial vacation of the north end of the street, and then a new 22nd Street running north and south. And that would be in between their property and then the adjacent condo building along Shader, and then there are other medical buildings located right here that are not owned by St. John's. As part of the preliminary review that staff has done, we looked very carefully at the circulation plan, spent a lot of time on that, since that sort of dictates a framework for development. The original Phase 2 circulation plan that was submitted proposed the new streets and, as described in your staff report, in essence created a series of 5 T intersections along Santa Monica Boulevard that created circulation problems in terms of right turn only, left turn or right turn only needs, and just a variety of offset streets with turn pockets, more activity than necessary. Staff has worked with the applicant over the past 8 months on this particular component of the proposal, and as a result, we've come to some agreement in concept on widening the Mullen Plaza, the existing entry plaza, to line up with the new streets so that there is a consistent flow and we don't have the 5T intersections that was part of the original proposal. The applicant will probably provide some more discussion about that. But this change to the Mullen Plaza would necessitate an amendment just to memorialize the change to the site plan for the plaza. That was part of Phase 1 development. With respect to parking, there's a whole discussion on parking, and I'm happy to answer more questions on that. But the applicant is proposing approximately 2,800 spaces. I've detailed on this graphic where those spaces would be located. This number of 2,800 spaces was prompted by a demand analysis that the applicant prepared, and I can, if anyone has questions, feel free to ask me about that. But the actual number that the demand analysis suggested was necessary for both Phase 1 and Phase 2 development was approximately 2,700 spaces. We did a quick analysis against the zoning ordinance parking requirements, and the number ends up being very close. Zoning ordinance would require approximately 2,800 spaces. It's important to note with this overall parking supply that this would replace St. John's current parking that they provide, which is about 1,600 spaces, half of which are owned and half of which approximately are leased off-site. So this parking supply replaces the leased spaces, eliminates the need for that really, and then provides net new approximately 1,200 spaces as part of their supply. The applicant's proposed phasing plan is really meant to address a couple of key issues that they see in looking ahead at Phase 2 development. They'd like to develop the state-of-the-art medical center. They need to remain fully operational during construction. They'd like to minimize construction impacts. They'd like certainty with respect to vested rights and provide time to fundraise. These are some of the justifications that came along with the application and the request to amend the DA. With the phasing plan, they'd also like the ability to reevaluate healthcare needs and be responsive to that going forward. The current development agreement, again, from those previous charts, basically provides the applicant 18 months from the time a development review permit is pulled for a building or is issued for a building. They have 18 months to pull a building permit for that, and they have approximately 4 to 5 years to construct that. The applicant is requesting that the Planning Commission be provided with the discretion to provide longer expiration dates for each of those 8 development review permits. So Planning Commissions, for instance, would issue a development review permit instead of the typical 24-month expiration date, meaning the time you have to vest that permit and through pulling a building permit. They're asking for timeframes ranging between 21 months and 233 months. These are tied to those 8 development review permits. Currently, the way the process is structured and with the applicant's amendment, the Planning Commission would need to approve that South Campus Master Plan and all of the 8 development review permits that are currently pending in our system. Again, so this is, pulling building permits over a 20-year period. And so I just wanted to give you a quick example. If, for instance, in 2018, the city approved the master plan and the 8 DR permits for all 5 stages of development, and then at the very tail end in 2039, the applicant could come to the city and obtain a building permit for that last stage E building and start construction. That's the way the current framework is proposed. What does this look like in a chart in terms of a phasing plan? I won't go through every step, but this shows you, this is what I want to point out. City's only discretionary approvals happen at this point. This is the approval of the South Campus Master Plan and the 8 development review permits. This is per the applicant's proposed amendment. So approvals happen here in red, in this green line, so to speak. And then each of these arrows represents the time at which a building permit would be issued and the length of construction for each of those 8 buildings. So we're looking at year 1 starting at master plan approval, DR permit approvals, and looking at pulling permits 20 years out. In response to the applicant's proposal, staff has evaluated a couple of amendments and really looking at the process and see what is the best way to preserve the city's rights and protect the community through this process while allowing St. John's to have the time. It may very well need to provide the state-of-the-art medical facility that I think benefits the community as a whole. So we proposed in our staff report two amendments. One is a procedural amendment, really to, in our minds, to correct one particular structural element in the existing development agreement. Right now, the Phase 2 procedures authorize require Planning Commission to take action on the master plan, and council would review that on appeal. Staff is recommending that instead of Planning Commission, that council take action, that the council has review authority over what we would like to consider a Phase 2 master plan that addresses both the North and the South Campus. The applicant has certainly provided all the details for North and South Campus, but the master plan requirement is only for the South Campus per the DA. We'd like to broaden that to really support integration of review and, the best product at the end of the day. If Planning Commission and Council are interested in this procedural amendment addressing expansion of the master plan to sort of a Phase 2 instead of South Campus only, and is also looking to have review authority, then we would need to take that amendment up first before we take a master plan and development review permits through public hearings. Staff has also proposed a substantive amendment. What's outlined in your staff report is really a concept and a framework for thinking about phase development in a way that preserves the time that St. John's, again, may very well need, but also provides a structured review process. What we've decided, at least preliminarily, is to offer an alternative for consideration for this commission and also for council. We'd like to address vested rights and the entire Phase 2 project with structured review that gets away from approving a master plan and development review permits 20 years in advance in some cases of construction. What we envision is establishing a phasing plan that's part of the Phase 2 master plan that includes specifically development review permit review and approval milestones. So again, instead of all 8 coming at once in the beginning of a process, we would like to stagger those development review permits based largely in part on the applicant's phasing plan, but in a way that makes sense, which I'll go into a little bit more. Through this process, we'd like to ensure that first level priorities for St. John's are incorporated early in the approval process: John Wayne Cancer Institute, Child and Family Development Center, and parking. We'd also like to identify those later stages of development, stages C, D, and E. We'd like to tie that to a performance schedule so that we have deadlines for permit filing, permit approval. And we would also like to take the opportunity at those checkpoints for development permit review to reanalyze parking. We know parking is a huge issue. The 2,800 spaces, we've heard comments that that's way too many spaces. We've heard that may not be enough. I think it makes sense to provide regulatory review check-ins for in this instance, for the last 4 buildings, so that we can look in real time at how parking is being used on the site. Remember that new buildings and new parking supplies are going to be coming online, and we'd like to take a pause in that process and reassess. So we know going forward, are 400 more spaces needed under this particular building? We'd like to relook at those questions. We'd also like these buildings to reflect changing needs in the community, as well as new healthcare priorities. So, another chart. This is modeled exactly after the one we showed earlier, and the only thing I want to highlight here is these orange bars, which contemplate, this is not a final plan by any means, but this takes a look at where city approvals would be staggered through that 20-year phasing process. So we have, for illustrative purposes only, we've got the Phase 2 master plan and development review permits for Stage A and Stage B. Those are their critical first-level priorities. We look at those right at the end of this review process. And then within a 10-year period, we're requiring development review permits for Stage C to be filed. We would do the parking analysis. We would look at that actual building, that actual design, that actual siting at that time. And again, also for stage D and E, we see that pushed a little farther into the phasing timeline. Again, just wanted to show you again, only discretion at that one first point versus the one where we have 3 stages of city review. To benefits, the staff report outlines a key area where we'd like planning